Okay, so for the purpose of the demo, what we have done is that we have actually taken a retail industry supermarket organization which has like a sales data and like ERP data, like the supply chain and the inventory management data. Like probably like, this could be like your Dynamics 365 by Microsoft ERP tool. So like they have the typical sales data like coupons, customers, discounts, products, and transactions. So these are like the we have taken a CS. So and also like I do have in a Databricks environment here with a sample compute which already pre-configured with the Databricks packages like Lucid packages. Like we have a Lucid Data Hub version 0.1.272. This is a PySpark library built using Python as a source code and also utilizes the PySpark sessions internally. And this is package is available. So our idea is to make this package open source down the line. So this package is pretty much used for most of the common data transformations and data movement activities when we are trying to move the data from one layer of the data to other layers. Like if you look at the medallion architecture, like you're moving the data from bronze to silver, silver to gold, and also any typical transformations, we have actually created utilities and packaged them into this Python wheel file, and then like anyone can download this from the package libraries and into their clusters and then take a start. So this is a Spark environment which will be utilized primarily for the ETL operations, and also along with these Spark, like we do also have a custom built Lucid Data Hub LDH workflow jobs. And these are typically like in notebooks, for example, data source scan. So these notebooks are actually used by these are workflows and then connected to the notebooks here, and which will trigger the the package which I just showed you just recently. Those Lucid Data Hub Python wheel package will be initialized and invoked. For example, like this. So these like whenever we start the customer, like we preset this entire environment in the customer environment, and we get into the Lucid management portal. So let's get into the Lucid management portal here. So this is the playground environment which we use for our customer demonstration purpose. But typically, we install this entire management portal into the customer's own Azure or AWS environment, whatever the cloud of choice they have. And once, so this supports both Azure Entra ID and AWS IAM. So it depends upon the customer's native cloud platform. So we do support the integrations with their own. Identity providers. So in this case, let's use the Azure as an example, and we'll just sign in. So I think since I'm already signed in previously, so it did not ask me for an Azure authentication. Otherwise, you'll see an Azure authentication pop up, so the user will be able to log in. So this is the home screen of the product, which shows you the various like user accounts and data hubs and data pods and some of the common processes of data engineering, like profiling, mapping, modeling. So we will show like how this entire process of data engineering is encapsulated, and comprehensively we have built an AI based solution to accelerate each of the step of a data engineering process. So everything starts with a data pod. So a data pod is in a virtual workspace kind of thing, like where the data engineers and data analysts can actually start working on their source data systems, and then also provide some grounding information about their industry type and the data domains the data belongs to, so that the large language models which are connected to this data pod in the background, technically on the Lucid actually, so will use these grounding information such as industry and the data domains to actually to identify the meaning of the data, and then start building the relationships, and then start building the canonical models and the data which has all the detailed uh, information has already been pre-configured. For example, if you look at the sales supply chain and the service connections, like I have my sales data in Azure Gen 2 and my inventory data is in Azure Gen 2, supply chain data, and where is my managed Spark? So this is the same Spark environment where I have my Lucid Data Hub libraries are deployed. So if you, and then the data lake. So what we are seeing here is that once the data pod is set up, all the service connections to data sources and the target data lake in the Databricks environment, and as well as the compute layer in the Databricks environment. So now the user is inside the data pod, which provides that all the features required to carry out the data engineering activities such as data profiling, mapping, modeling, and data engineering activities like pipelining and data lakes and data analytics. So in the data profiling, it's something like your analyst is going to understand the data, like by profiling the data, like finding the statistical information, like what is how many rows it has, what is the size of the data, what's the min and max values, and also the primary keys, the delta keys, the unique keys of the data, and then the business descriptions, which is generated by the LLM. And the user has an L model. The canonical models are nothing but your standardized entities, which can represent your silver data lake zone. So in this case, we have is, for example, if you look at this one, like we have a sales transaction canonical entity with all the related attributes information, and also users can also create some custom attributes here. So these custom attributes which we have created using the large language model, so the transformation code to calculate this custom attributes is generated by the LLMs. And once you execute this code, this is going to run on my Databricks environment, which is connected in the background. And once we execute, then and then once we complete the execution and then come back here and select this sales transaction entity and then do a data lake load or data warehouse load, then it will push the data from the source system into the target system, in this case like a Unity catalog. So for example, here I have a sales transaction data is pre-loaded already here, which is preloaded by the Lucid Data Hub. So for example, if I trigger this one, right, so it's going to call a job in the, it is going to initiate in a data warehouse load job on Databricks environment, so which will try to load the data. And then you can also add some data quality rules, but let me show you. Actually, data quality rules are auto generated by the Lucid. So for example, in the sales transactions entity, so these are the data quality rules are generated by the large language models and recommended based on the source data profiling what we have done, and the user can easily add this, for example, range checking on a customer ID. So once you add it, and then once you go and give a name here, and then you can go ahead and save this one, and then a code will be generated and pushed into the GitHub repository or Azure DevOps repository. So this the code is also integrated with the Azure environment in the background or a Git environment in the background, so that all the code is integrated back, so the Databricks can connect to this Git repos or Azure repos, so, and to execute those pipelines. So once this canonical model is developed, so then what we do is that we go into the entity reconciliation, and then we identify what are the related entities for a given business context or business use case. So there's a sales data, inventory data, product data, and so these grouping is again done by the large language models, and further down the line it will automatically identifies the relationships. So these relationships are also identified by the large language model. So when, and the Lucid provides that ability to process these relationships, validate these relationships, and also to modify these relationships if they wants to change anything. uh, so so for example, in this monthly sales summary, which is calculated before, so this one has the the pre relationships and the data model is already created by the Lucid, what you can see it here. And when you go, and then obviously you will have an option to modify these relationships and all. And then the enriched data model is something where you actually, the users are going to create is a some very specific tables for the analytics or reporting purpose. For example, you have an executive requires a monthly sales summary by location data, so you come here and you describe all the state, all this information manually. The Lucid will recommend these entities, automatically recommend what are the attributes required for the particular requirements, and then it will automatically identify what relationships it needs to apply. And then user can provide a customized prompt information here. So once you update this prompt, so the Lucid will generate this source code, which is again deployed onto the Databricks environment to execute. So which will generate an enriched table in the gold zone. So once I do a data warehouse load here, it will again trigger a new job on the Databricks, and then finally it will create a monthly sales summary by location table here, which has some sample data, uh, which has the data which is pre-calculated by the transformation logic, which is part of that particular uh, code what you're saying. And so once these enriched entities are generated, then the users can come in into the data analytics module, and then they can actually go in and then ask the large language models like what kind of KPIs they can produce out of this enriched data. So now based on the sales data, like they can average stock by product, and the stock, like these are the inventory KPIs, like they can ask Lucid to run. And then we also have some KPIs related to the sales process. So, and then the users can go in and then add a new KPIs as well. Suppose they wants to have a sales amount KPI, and then provide a prompt, it will generate a source code. And then when you execute that prompt source code, then it will create a table in the data warehouse catalog, what we are seeing here. So for example, I have a sales amount KPI which is already created, so which has a sample, which has the data which is pre-populated by the by the job which is triggered by the Lucid, which is produced by the Lucid, and then deployed on the Lucid on the Databricks environment. So finally, once this data is available, you can publish these data sets back into any BI tool like Power BI. Or so this is like the native to the Databricks environment. But what the users are going to get the advantage is that any data preparation and the data pipelining, which is technically a very complex activities, so now they can actually streamline that process and then accelerate that process using the canonical models and the enriched data models features available in the Lucid Data Hub, because it understands your industry context, it understands your grounding data domains information, it understands your data profiling data, it knows like what type of information you have it, and then finally based on your description about your use case requirements and final output, how the data should be there in your final tables, you describe it, it will generate the code for you, and then you deploy that as a jobs on a Databricks environment, and then you pipeline that one through your workflows. And then instead of doing the so now the to implement an enterprise data lake project or data warehouse project from end to end, if in a typical scenario traditional approaches would take like 1 year, rather you spend 3 months of effort to complete the same output. Thank you very much.